Welcome back to the Dragons Den, proudly brought to you by the Bendigo Dragons American Football Club. I'm Steve.
And I'm Grace, and we're back for episode 2.
We're in the off-season, which for some, that means rest.
But for football players, that means work.
Off-season is where teams are built. Games are won on Saturdays and Sundays, but they're earned the months before. This is when strength conditioning programs start, skills are sharpened, and new players walk through the doors.
It's also when culture is reinforced, attendance at training, commitment to gym sessions, supporting teammates, and that's what separates great teams to bad ones.
And for the Dragons, this is a big development window. We're focusing on strength and conditioning, recruiting new players, sponsorship opportunities, and fundraising. And of course, there's also just the old admin work that we all do through the season anyway.
A big focus of off-season is development, not just physically, but mentally. Understanding your role, understanding the playbook, and understanding discipline.
Exactly. Football isn't just physical. It's strategic. The more you understand the game, the faster and the more confidently you play, which actually leads us perfectly into our new segment.
Grace. That's right. Let's start with this week's rule.
Offside, one of the most common penalties in American football. So what is it, I hear you say? Offside happens when a defensive player crosses the line of scrimmage before the ball is snapped.
So basically, you just can't jump early.
Exactly. Offensive and defensive lines face each other at the line of scrimmage. The play is officially started when the ball is snapped. If a defender moves across the neutral zone early, it's a penalty.
And that usually results in a 5-yard penalty against the defense.
Now, here's why it matters. 5 yards may not sound like a lot, but in football, that can mean a first down. It can mean a field goal opportunity or completely changing the momentum of the drive.
Often, that's caused by trying to time the snap count. Sometimes, you guess wrong.
Discipline wins games. And that's the rule of the week.
And we'd like to welcome tonight Coach Andy Nilsson from the Southern Vikings Gridiron Club over in Victoria here. Good evening, Coach. How are you today?
Great, Steve. It's great to be with you and Grace tonight. Thanks for including me.
No problems at all. Thanks for coming on and being the first non-Dragons interview we've had, which is really good. Tell us a little bit about yourself to start with, just where you've been and how you came into this field.
Sure. Okay. Well, once upon a time, so it was a long time ago, I came to Australia for the first time about, almost 30 years ago. And I came on a holiday, and when I was here, I met my future wife-to-be, and she and I stayed in touch and corresponded, and we were married in 2000 in Williamstown, and brought her back to North Carolina with me. I'm from North Carolina, which is on the East Coast of the United States. And she lived there with me for a couple of years, but it was always part of the deal that if she fell pregnant, we would come back to Australia because she made me insist on that because she wanted to be near her mother and her sisters. So somehow that happened, and in 2002 we came back to Melbourne, where my wife is from, grew up, and we had our first son, David, in 2002, and then our second son, Joe, we had him in 2004. My football career, I came to coaching kind of late. I've only been a coach for about 10 years. I started coaching when my sons were playing at Croydon Rangers.
Yep.
We live in the Dandenong, so that's kind of the closest club to us. And our first to play was David, and then Joe played after him. And I started out as a volunteer coach. And I'd grown up around football, obviously, my whole life, and played a little bit when I was very, very small, when I was basically middle school. But I've been around it my whole life. My cousins all played in high school and in college. And so as I volunteered, I enjoyed it enough that I came back every season.
Yeah. Okay.
And so um, David went on to become a quarterback for Croydon Rangers, both in their 19s and then in their men's team. Joe was played receiver on their 15s and 19s teams. And Joe actually went back to the U.S. to play football in college. And he's finishing his third year now in North Carolina at a little college there. I went from coaching at Croydon Rangers to being the head coach for the Southeastern Predators, and that was 4 or 5 years ago, where I coached their under 15 or under 16s team at the time, and we won the Vic Bowl, and that was fun. And then 3 years ago, I had to go back to the United States. My father is elderly and was unwell, and so I had to go back there, and I lived there for a couple of years and coached high school ball. Um, until my father passed away in October, and that was kind of my cue to come back to Melbourne with my wife. So you got the whole story. And now I'm back here, and I was graciously invited to coach at Southern Vikings, which is a real opportunity, and I'm glad to be doing that.
Yeah, we're certainly happy to have you back in this state. That's for sure. I believe you had a week away up in Queensland for the Victorian Eagles. You coached their under 15s team. How was that?
I did. It was a great experience. The outcome wasn't terrific. We lost when we were up there, but the experience was fantastic. I mean, for almost 3 months, I coached and trained along with the assistant coaches, 31 kids, and incidentally, we had Australia's only, as far as I know, this year, Australia's only female player on our team. And uh, uh, Her name is Autumn, and she was a running back, and she plays for Western Crusaders. But she was on our team too as our starting running back.
Yep.
And so we trained 31 kids over 9 weeks, and we went up to Queensland. Not sure, what we would expect. The only film that we had was from last year's competition versus Queensland. And so I kind of had a sense that, well, maybe they would do like they did last year. No, that, just goes to show you can't rely on that kind of thing, because they came out not just with all new players and with a whole new coaching staff, but they presented stuff that was just not on the radar. And so we ended up losing the first 2 games pretty handily. Unfortunately, we played them pretty tight in the third game. We dropped that one too, but it was a great experience, and all the players said that they learned a lot.
Yeah. I think any state representation is a great experience for the young kids. The one thing about this sport, we can go so far and get so far in it, whether it be your state or even the country itself, representing Australia. So it's great that these kids have been allowed to get to that next step there.
Can't encourage it enough. I think every club should encourage their players, especially their younger ones, to try out for state and to participate. Because the skills that they learn, the exposure that they have. I mean, the club season the way it is in Victoria, we know we all just kind of play each other. We know each other. It just kind of gets to be old hat after a while. But when you play on that level, you're playing at a higher level. It's a higher skill level. You're seeing stuff that you haven't been exposed to before, and you take all that in. And then the best part is you go back to your club, and you can then kind of coach your club up. So I can't emphasize it enough. I'm grateful that the league asked me to coach their 15s up there. I would do it again if they asked, but at the end of the day, it has to be, what's best for everybody.
When coaching these players, what was the important thing you tried to teach the juniors besides just football skills, really?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that when you're coaching state, you have to understand that the players that you're coaching typically had some experience with playing football already. Uh, I don't think I really dissuade anyone who's never played before or has played very little from trying out for state. Now, at the end of the day, the state teams, you take who you can get, but there's an assumption that when you come to, in my case, in the case of my team, when you come to combine, which was the first session that we ran, there's an assumption that you've got an awareness, that you've got a little bit of skill, because we've got a small window of time to get that team pulled together, integrated with the coaching, everybody across the same strategies on offense and defense and special teams, have everyone speaking the same language. And then you got to go up and play. And sometimes it can be as little as, 2 months. And especially when, in our case, we only practiced once a week. Last year, I think they practiced twice, but because it's such a long drive for a lot of people to come into, in this case, Footscray once, every week. I knew that I think I ran a 3.5 hour practice on Sundays, and I knew that practice needed to be absolutely airtight. It needed to be full and active for the entire 3.5 hours to make it worth it, because I wasn't going to ask people to come twice. So this is a long way to answer your question, Grace, but there's an assumption when you're coaching state that there's a basic familiarity. As I said to players after combine, we then kind of did selections, and of the 36 who showed up in combine, there was 31 that we ended up taking to Queensland. What I said was, look, I don't have time. We don't have time as a coaching staff to coach you the basics. There's an assumption that you understand the game, that you have a rough idea of the position that you're playing, although doesn't have to be perfect. And that we can then build on that with the limited time that we have. And so the priorities for us then became, take those players, integrate them together. I mean, you've got players who've only played each other in club ball. And, just to use an example, to put Crew players and Rangers players together is not easy. and et cetera. But, I can't be worried about that. And one thing I said, I made this very clear. I said, in my program anyway, there will be absolutely no reference whatsoever to club. I don't want to see club shirts. I don't want to see club jerseys. I don't want to see club helmets. You got to use, but there'll be no talk about it, because we've got to be a united team together completely, without any sort of artificial barriers or anything like that. And fortunately, in this experience, I think I only had to speak to players one time about that. So it was getting the team together, getting them familiar with their coaches. I had 7 coaches plus me, getting them into the offensive playbook and the defensive scheme book. And I think what I did is I structured it so on week 3 we were into the books, and then week 4 and we were doing some install, and week 5 we finished the install, and week 6 we then would test it, and etc. So good planning in football. Look, there's an old saying, Steve, you probably heard it. You don't win the game in high school verbiage, it would be Friday night, but here it's Saturdays. You don't win the game on Saturday. You win the game in the lead up, in practice.
That's right.
So if you've had good practice sessions and everyone's clear and you've got a good team culture and the coaches are across everything they need to do, then you're in about as good a position you could be. I don't know, Grace, did that answer your question good enough?
Yes, thank you.
Since you were a young fella playing, how has the game changed? Obviously it changes every year with new rules and new things coming in. But as a junior, if you were to put your junior hat back on as a kid,
right,
the difference between now and then, what would be a main difference that you would find?
What a great question. I don't know if you can see, I'll bring my face up real close. There's a scar right here on the bridge of my nose, right up here,
Yep.
because I played uh, nose guard.
No, okay.
And in those days, way before Grace, and maybe even before I used deep,
Maybe.
we were coached to hit at the sternum. You
Yep.
know where that is?
Yep.
Right here. So when I would get in the stance, and you get all the way down, but you still got your head up enough to see. I'd hit that center or that guard in a sternum. And I just use that as an example of how the game has changed, because if you were to coach that way today, you'd be kicked off the field, and you should be.
Definitely.
And I won't go into why that was. That's just how the game was. We know that it's still a physical game, but the physicality has taken a different shape and a different form.
Yeah, I think most sports
So
have done that, haven't they?
it has. And well, I mean, we know the kind of the background to it, that there were a lot of injuries, and frankly a lot of unnecessary injuries. And one thing that I'm careful to talk about when I'm talking to parents of players is that as I roll out this statistic, which is an interesting one, and that is that there's fewer incidents of concussion in our football code, than every other code.
Yep.
I'll bet you didn't know that. I'll bet, everyone thinks, rugby or footy or anything like that. Well, then, gridiron gets concussed more.
Yeah.
We don't.
Yeah.
There's even more concussions percentage wise in soccer than there is in gridiron.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's a common misconception that ours is the more dangerous sport. It is not. It only is dangerous when it's not coached right.
Yeah.
Because if you coach players properly, and that doesn't include just contact, that includes things like nutrition, that includes things like conditioning. If you're coaching those things, in addition to the contact and in addition to the skills, then your chances of getting injured on the field are way reduced.
Yeah.
It's only when it's sloppy coaching. It's coaches, and I'm not pointing fingers. I'm just saying, and this can be a problem in Australia, frankly, where and no, there's no fault to Australians. I mean, the fact of the matter is we're the minority football code here, very much so.
Yeah.
But I find that they tend to coach the same things over and over and over again, and they don't. What happens when you teach the same bad thing over and over again? Lots of bad things, plus everyone else that you're coaching with thinks, oh, well, that's the right way to coach.
Yep.
I mean, when I left to go back to the U.S., which was about 3 years ago, I mean, we were still in some clubs still running Oklahoma drill, and if you run that today in the U.S., you'll lose your job.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure it's still run around the place now. Some of the clubs probably still do it. Unfortunately.
Well,
but
so I guess the physicality is one. Obviously there have been rule changes over the years, and we kind of know what some of those are. Just how the game is played. It's interesting because we kind of come full circle now. You're now seeing a lot more tight ends in certainly in college, but tight ends are now being a fixture in the high school level.
Yeah.
And you're seeing fullbacks playing. I know certainly when I was, a fullback was a part of every offense. But then suddenly fullbacks disappeared because then everyone got enamored with the air raid. And then, but what we're finding, and then of course what happens in football is that something comes in, an offense comes in, and then the defense reacts to it, and then the offense changes because we're constantly innovating from each other.
Yeah.
So the air raid was the flavor of the month for about 2 years, and then it dropped back. And now, we've had a couple of incarnations since then. But now, basically what are people doing? They're running receiver bunches on one side, and they're running, a tailback and a fullback. And they're actually doing split fields, which, we didn't, when I was growing up, the concept of running a split field, of running one kind of offense on one side of the field and one kind of offense to the other.
Wasn't
Can you
there.
imagine? That was
Yeah.
just, no one ever did that.
Yep. Yeah, that's right. So yeah, it's certainly come a long way. That's for sure.
So when you are like, what do you look for in young players that tells you that they could go a long way in this sport?
Excellent question. I tell you what, no offense, Steve, but that was the best question of the night right there.
Oh, we've got more for you. Don't worry.
Okay. Okay. Well, I'm going to spend some time on this one.
Yep.
You know what I look for more than anything else?
Hmm.
I look for that little guy or that girl who comes to practice early every time, who stays late every time, who cannot wait to get into pads and helmet and get into contact.
Yep.
And then there's a common phrase that I say every time. I always teach my players, I said, anytime it gets hard and anytime you start to hurt and anytime you get tired and every time all the rest of it, you'll say, I love it and want more of it. You will say, I love it and I want more of it. The player, Grace, who I say that once to and then says it back to me the whole rest of the season, is my favorite player.
Yep.
Notice that I'm not going straight to the physical aspect.
Yeah.
I'm not going to size. I'm not going to speed necessarily. I'm not going to, good hands or anything like that. I'm even not going to multi-sports, although I certainly pay attention to multi-sports. If you, Grace, have played not just gridiron, but you're also playing field hockey or playing field hockey, certainly you're playing basketball. If you're playing anything like that, I will come talk to you as a coach for sure, because that tells me a whole raft of things, not just about what your physical ability is, but what your mentality is.
Yep.
Are you competitive?
Yes.
To the point where you will push yourself from season to season and go from gridiron into basketball into swimming and back into gridiron and you'll never miss a beat. That's the kind of player that I'm always going to be looking for first. And then I'm hanging out for the one who's going to come to practice first and leave last and not be this is something we got to watch out for. There are some players, and I get why they do it, but there's some that are, I got to make sure I clean my language up for this. They're kind of the bum kissers, for lack of a better word. The ones who will run around and yes, coach, no, coach, and pick up the stuff and everything. And don't get me wrong, all the stuff that we bring out on the field to train with, I'm not picking up. That's your job as a player.
Yeah.
But you don't got to tell me about it. And you don't got to come and tell me with a big smile on your face like you did it and nobody else did.
Yeah.
That's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for the one who does it and says nothing. That is the best thing.
Yep.
I'm looking for the one that I can give a coaching point to, and that they'll take it onto the field and they'll apply it and they'll mess it up. Not necessarily they'll get it right, but they'll apply it and they'll mess it up, and then they'll come back and they'll say, okay, I did this, but what do I need to do to finish it up? Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm looking for that player more than anybody.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it really is more of a mental game nowadays as well, to be in the right frame of mind and have everything in front of you that way, isn't it?
It's a misconception about our game. There's an impression that all we do is, someone said to me the other day, aren't you just a bunch of fat blokes who crash into each other?
Yeah. Crash and bash.
I don't know what game you're watching.
Yeah.
Maybe it's WWF or whatever, but it ain't football.
No, definitely not.
Because football is a chess game. It's a chessboard, and there's the physicality. Absolutely, there's the physicality. But I tell you what, I'll take Grace or another player any day, and I'll play her up against some 6'8", 300-pound offensive tackle, and I'll play Grace on the edge, and I'll train her how to be an absolute assassin defensive end.
Yeah.
and I'll beat that tackle every time.
Yeah.
And I'll beat him. I'll beat him with intelligence. I'll beat him with speed, with ruggedness, because I'm going to train Grace so she can take any hit and get back up again.
Yeah.
And I'm going to train her with skill and with speed and intelligence.
Yeah.
When I was coaching back in North Carolina these last 3 years, I coached at the high school level. I coached 3 seasons. And the first season at the high school where I coached at, which happened to be the same one I graduated from 40 years ago.
Okay.
But the first season we went 2-8.
Yep.
And I was under a new head coach who had taken over the program after they went 0-10 for 3 seasons in a row.
Right.
And we went 2-8. Tell you what, that's not fun. And then, we kept working, and we worked all through the spring and all through the summer.
Mm.
All through the spring and all through the summer, because you play football in autumn there.
Yep.
And the next season, 4-6. And the third season, 6-4, we made it into state playoffs.
Awesome.
And I coach a defensive line and special teams.
Yep.
And my defensive end, the second year I coached there, Jaden Willis was his name. He was the third highest ranked defensive end in the state of North Carolina. Now, just put this in perspective. 1,150 high schools.
Yeah.
And I coached the third best D end in the state, who had the third highest number of sacks.
Yep.
And every quality that I described to you, Grace, about a good player, Jaden was. He was not the biggest. He was not the meanest. He was actually an extremely friendly guy. He wanted to, after high school, he wanted to go to college to be a high school history teacher.
Yeah.
But I tell you this right now, when he got on that field, he saw nothing but winning his position.
Yeah.
Notice that I did not say win the game.
Yeah.
Win his position.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, isn't it? That every position, every player has a position and a set of moves that they really can do. It is really like chess. We when we go to schools and teach at schools, that's the one thing we say. If you could describe something, how would you describe it? And they all say it's about crashing and bashing and that sort of thing. And we go, no, it's about chess. Everybody gets a move and everybody has a certain thing they can do. Our sport is more like chess, whereas AFL or something like that is more like organised chaos, because we all start in a position and then we just go run anywhere we want to run. Whereas our sport, you can't do that. Your lineman can't touch a ball really,
yeah.
And that sort of thing. So there's so many rules around each position in what they can and can't do, isn't there?
There really are. And the team that just throws a bunch of, I go back to that saying, a bunch of fat blokes out there to crash and bash. The team that does that, that's not a winning team.
No.
That's, a winning team is the one that does all those practices, like I said, as much as you can in well-crafted practices, not just getting together and kicking the football. Well-crafted. The ones who do that, the ones who do strength training between practices, the ones who watch their nutrition, that's the winning team there. And they're not necessarily the biggest ones.
Yep. So how do you build confidence and discipline in the younger athletes, especially the ones that are new to the sport, who probably haven't had that discipline before?
Well, it starts from the top. It starts with the head coach.
Yep.
And then it gets reflected through your assistant coaches. So when I get people together in my practices, if you ever come to one of mine, you'll see it very quickly that I'm not a nasty guy. I'm not a mean guy, but there's no smoking and joking in my practices.
Yep.
I'm glad to have everybody there. It's great to have you. We'll have fun every once in a while, but fun comes from competing.
Yep.
Fun comes from striving. Fun comes from succeeding and failing and having your mates there with you to help you get back up again and to hit it hard on the next play. That's where the fun comes through. So when they hear that in your voice, kind of like I'm talking to you now, and they see that in your presentation, they know what kind of practice it's going to be.
Yep.
And then I encourage my coaches not to be cookie cutter carbon copies of me. Everyone's different. And some of them are more laid back and some of them are more intense and some whatever. And you want that. But at the end of the day, this is my program.
So what has been one of your most proudest moments as a coach throughout your career?
Wow. Well, I'd say probably winning the Vic Bowl in 22 with Preds. That was pretty special. And we just had a really good team. We had some good players there, and we just kept them together. It's really good when you've got good chemistry among players.
Yeah.
And there were probably about, oh gosh, 10 of those players that really just worked together well. So that was fun. That was certainly a highlight. The next one would be that player that I mentioned, Jaden Willis, who went on to play in college, coaching him in my second year back in the U.S. coaching high school ball. I think the third one was seeing the results of all our work in the previous two seasons culminate in that third season, going 6-4 and going to state playoffs. Had we made state playoffs, we would have gone probably another 2 rounds before we were eliminated. By that point, you're really playing teams that it's just too hard to beat. But seeing the fruits of all that effort, all those weeks and months of practicing early in the morning and late at night and dealing with player stuff and dealing with coaching stuff, so that you finally turn a program around, that's pretty satisfying.
Yeah, I bet. So what advice would you give to young Australian players who dream of playing college football or representing Australia, that sort of thing? What sort of advice could you give to them?
Wow. Well, play as much as you can. Play as much football as you can. If there are only 2 kind of pathways when you come out of Australia that you want to play. The most obvious pathways to play in the U.S. and to play in high school or in college. There's another pathway that's developing now, and that's in Europe. And so there are more and more players who have succeeded or done well in Australia who are finding a place to play in Europe. The European scene, and this is largely thanks to the NFL, has grown quite a bit, and that's a good place to go as well. But to get to either of those destinations, you've got to play a lot. People have to know it. So if your club is not already filming games, they should be filming games. That film is not only important for improving the team during the season, and whether you're Dragons or your Melton Wolves or your Buccaneers or your Vikings or anyone, you should be filming. Certainly film as much practice as you can, film all the scrimmages that you can, because it's the film. I really came to appreciate this when I coached in the U.S. It's the film that teaches you how to be better at the next practice.
Yeah, okay.
So, and it also helps those players who want to go on and play overseas, because you use that film to make your own highlight reel and make your own Insta account and make your own all that stuff, your Twitter and all that, however you're promoting yourself. Because I can speak more to the U.S. scene than I can to the European scene. But coaches in the U.S. now, the recruiting practices are way different than even they were 10 and 5 years ago.
Yeah.
In even 5 and 10 years ago, coaches were still recruiting out of high school. So a college coach would come to a high school game and start looking for players, and then approach the coach and approach the player, and then that would be the beginning of that player going on to play at that college. In the 3 seasons I coached in North Carolina and I just got back from, we had probably total across all 3 seasons, we probably had 3 college coaches come to half a dozen games.
Yep.
Which is nothing. And the way that they're doing it now, though, is it's all through social media.
Yeah.
Much of it's through social media. And then also, it's this whole phenomenon called the transfer portal, which I don't know if you've heard about how that works in the U.S. But basically, college players in the U.S. are treated now like free agents.
Yeah.
So in the past, it wasn't that way. If you went to a particular college, let's say the University of North Carolina or North Carolina State University or one of those, you were locked in that at that school for 4 years.
Yeah.
That you might, under very, very extreme circumstances, be allowed to transfer, but it was very unusual. Now, everybody transfers.
Yeah.
You go into the portal, which is basically like going into becoming a free agent during the free agency season, and then you shop around for another football opportunity. Here's where it can hurt Aussie players if they don't know what they're doing.
After all your years coaching, what still excites you the most about the game day and developing players?
Wow. Developing players, what gives me satisfaction more than anything, I suppose, still is when something clicks with a player and you see him do it on the field. I mean, there's few things that kind of match that. If you've coached something, a way to do something or a concept, and then you see it applied on the field,
Yeah.
there are few things better than that.
Yeah.
On game day, well, look, everybody likes to win. They should anyway, if you're going to coach and play for that matter. So winning's pretty good. I think that it's not just, winning. I mean, that's always better than losing. But if you're winning and you won and it was messy, or you won by accident, that's not as satisfying as everything coming together. Where you won on offense because it was the plays were right, they were called at the right time in the right sequence, and you had the right personnel. It helps if you have a quarterback who knows what they're doing. Steve, I'm sure you can appreciate this, but the beauty of an offensive line that works.
Yep.
And then on defense, I'm a defensive coach by orientation. I started out being a defensive coach, so seeing some great deep defensive play, seeing linebackers crashing and finding the right gaps and just picking them up before they even make a yard, that's pretty satisfying.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that'd be it.
All right. One last question, Coach. What would you say to every club in Victoria, Australia, or wherever about juniors? Why is it so important for clubs to build junior programs and build good junior programs, not just any kind of junior programs, but good, long-lasting junior programs?
It goes to the core of why it is that we play this game. Why'd you get your club together in the first place?
Yep.
Chances are you're a competitor and you want to win.
Yep.
Well, I'll tell you how you win. Consistently. And you win consistently by having juniors. Because it's not just juniors, it's experienced players. If you don't ever run juniors and you only ever run men's or run, then what happens is you're having to train. I mean, this is the thought that I think is missing in so many clubs in Australia. And I'm do my best every day to try and change this mindset. You could take a 21-year-old or 22-year-old young person, male or female, who really is keen on playing the game, and say, great, I'm ready to go. No, you're not. Because if you're playing me from my club, that same 22, 21, or 22-year-old player, I will have been training that person since they were 13 years old.
Yeah.
So that is, 8 years worth of working out all the basics, learning the ropes, learning the mistakes. Anyone who thinks, doesn't matter how good an athlete you are, anyone who thinks at 22, 23, 25, 30 years old, you can come into this sport and play it just because you've done Madden on your Game Boy at home.
Yeah.
Or worse yet, I mean, no offense, but flag football, it's just not even the same sport.
Yeah.
So anyone who thinks that they can come and then do this with just that, well, the results will speak for themselves.
Yeah.
So that's reason number one. Reason number two is those players that you're growing up through the ranks, that's the future of your club. Because they'll then go out and they'll bring in their people, and there's a big change in life between someone who's 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 years old and someone who's in their 20s with a family and settled down. They don't know much other than their job, their misses, and their work and their football. Whereas a young person like Grace or whoever is constantly interacting with other young people, and they're bringing an energy and a dynamism and a real excitement that an older person's not going to.
Yeah.
And then finally, there's the future aspect. You want to be a club that offers prospective players a future. Maybe it's in Australia, maybe it's in overseas. But if all you're playing is 30-some-year-old men who don't have a background in the sport, where's the future in that?
Yeah. Yeah, it's certainly hard to get anywhere if you haven't got that level of knowledge. That's for sure.
No, you can't. You can't. You might as well just say that you're going to be stuck playing, third string linebacker at some little whatever for the rest of your life, because it's never going to get any bigger or better than that.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Coach, for coming on to the Dragons Den. We appreciate everything you've done for the state so far, and continue to watch your progress, and hopefully back to state next year and up again. So
it's been a pleasure. It's been a pleasure, and I tell you what, I'm a Vikings coach, but I'm a big Dragons supporter and a Dragons fan. Go Dragons in 2026. That's what I say.
Thanks, Coach.
Welcome back. Looking ahead, what does the club want to achieve during pre-season and before games start?
Well, we're looking at increasing squad depth by increasing our line capacity and that sort of thing. Improve strength benchmarks. Recruit and develop more juniors, which is a very big push of the club this year. Build leadership across the team.
And if you're listening and thinking you want to give American football a go, off-season is the right time. No pressure. Learn the basics, build fitness, and meet the team.
1. Grace, the Bendigo Dragons American Football Club is always open to new players. No experience required. All body types are welcome. Men and women, young athletes wanting to give a new challenge.
If you've ever watched NFL and been like, I'd love to try that, that's your sign.
Grace, we've got some come and tries coming up.
Yes, we do. On the 24th of May and the 21st of June at Epsom Huntley Recreation Reserve from 2 till 3:30 p.m.
We also are looking at bringing some to other towns around the place, Shepparton, Kyalla, Kyabram and Echuca. So we'll keep you informed of what's going on there.
You can get this on the QR code displayed here. And don't forget about our cheerleaders meet and greet on the 24th of May at the same time as our training. Same place. Can't wait to see you there.
So, Grace, off-season isn't quiet season. It's growth season.
It's preparation season.
And next week we'll break down another rule, and maybe we'll talk positional roles, quarterbacks, linebackers, and what they actually do.
We're just getting started.
And this has been episode 2 of the Dragons Den. I'm Steve.
And I'm Grace.
And we'll see you in the den.